This is the congressional debate for Republican candidates. The primary is coming up on June 28th. George Phillips, Claudia Tenney, Stephen Wells. Our panelists, of course, our own Jeff Manaske, Mark Baracco of WTR, and Alex Gerald of the Observer-Dispatch. Who gets the next question, which is first directed at Stephen Wells?
It is Alex.
Great, thank you. This topic has kind of come up quite a bit over the last couple of hours here, but a recent Pew Research Center poll found that the middle class has lost ground in nearly 9 in 10 U.S. metropolitan areas examined, including the Utica-Rome area. If elected, how would you help the middle class reverse that trend?
Well, look, again, I'm the only one up here who's actually created jobs. I've created middle-class jobs, many of them, okay? Starting from zero in the last 20 years, I've created over 1,000 jobs with me and my brother. The reality is to create jobs. The government doesn't do it, That's not how jobs are created. It's for demand for goods and services. And if you want jobs to be here in upstate New York, we have to get competitive. And what I mean by that is we need a competitive tax structure. We need a competitive regulatory structure. We've got to stop over-regulating and killing upstate businesses and upstate farms. Everywhere I go, for the last 4 months that I've started doing this, going around, I've heard story after story in industry after industry, which is really no surprise because we've all seen the jobs leave, but I've heard story after story of folks that have lost have been overregulated. I'll give you an example. I was down a 100-year-old farm, Judy Whitaker's farm, down in Whitney Point. I mean, her farm, it cost her $650,000. She had to move a silo because the EPA came in for no good reason, made her move her silo. This is the kind of regulatory overreach that is not making us safer. It is strictly killing family farms. We don't need bureaucrats down in Washington coming up and telling 100-year-old farms, and I've heard it, not just her story, by the way, right here in Oneida County. We don't need regulators from Washington telling us 100-year-old farms how to run their businesses. We know better up here.
George Phillips, you next.
I'll never forget when I was in college and I was working manufacturing. During my summers in college, my brother losing his job and going to North Carolina. And I remember being at the airport that day and watching my nephews and my parents cry as he got on that plane. And when you, as a listener, think about this question, the stagnant middle class, think about your stories of that. Think about our loved ones who can't be here. I've gone to excellent schools that I've had the pleasure to teach at the high school and the community college level. We need solutions. I believe I've laid them out with my upstate jobs plan. The tax code is a disaster. 78,000 pages long, 600 billion hours in compliance. Tax day was April 15th, but I think we're still recovering from just getting through that whole rigmarole of paying our taxes. How many months a year do Americans have to work in just paying to the federal government before they could actually take income? We need bold ideas on healthcare, a dynamic market of choice, and we need to take on the Fed, as I've said, with monetary policy. That's a huge missing link here to middle-class stagnation. Why, if we look back to our parents' generation, so many of us was one parent able to stay at home. Well, the kids were taken care of. Now, Americans are working harder than ever. We have two parents working. We have families struggling to get by, struggling to provide. I know it. I feel it as a history teacher. I'm at a private school. I've never signed a contract that was over $40,000 a year. So we're struggling. We deserve better. We need a bold plan for America and bold solutions.
All right. Next up is Assemblywoman Tenney.
Steve keeps saying he's the only one here that's created jobs. I'm the only person on this dais that actually has a manufacturing business in this community in the 22nd Congressional District that's celebrating its 22nd year. We've been devastated by regulations, Obamacare, which has been terrible for our business. The healthcare exchanges have been terrible. But one advantage Steve has that we don't have in our business, which I abhor, is that Steve has millions in contracts. That's millions of taxpayer money that goes to Steve's business so he can create a lot of money and create a lot of jobs that are used with taxpayer money. That to me is cronyism. How did Steve's company get millions in state contracts? Did they fairly contract for it, or was the $10,000 donation last year? Last year, not right when Cuomo was elected, or when after Rob Astorino was denied his chance to be governor. Why did he give that money? Why isn't he supporting less cronyism and getting government out? Why isn't he supporting controlling these free trade bills. Is he against free trade? Is he for TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is taking jobs from communities like ours, small manufacturing businesses like ours, or Revere, one of the oldest manufacturing businesses here, or Remington Arms, who was denied and lost businesses because of the SAFE Act, Cuomo's SAFE Act, which Steve Wells had no problem funding last year with his donations to Andrew Cuomo. What are we going to do? We're going to provide our citizens a chance through less regulation, lower taxes, eliminating this ridiculous minimum wage, standing up as the highest in the nation. That's something we have to do to help our family business. We are a manufacturer. We have provided jobs in central New York for 70 years.
All right. Rebuttal. It's 45 seconds, and we start with Stephen Wells.
Once again, the facts don't seem to bother the political aspirations of the Assemblywoman, but our company does not have millions in state contracts. The fact of the matter is that I am not a supporter of Andrew Cuomo, and nor am I a supporter of the SAFE Act. The fact is she was in the Assembly when the SAFE Act passed. She's been wholly ineffective at stopping it. She's been wholly ineffective in her 12 years in Albany at getting anything done. Albany is the wrong thing. We don't need more politicians from Albany going down to Washington where they don't get things done. That's not what this country needs. Your question was about creating jobs. We'll create jobs when business people like me go down to Washington and know what the heck they're doing with common sense and get rid of over-governmental regulation and make a tax structure that's competitive.
George Phillips, 45-second rebuttal.
When we talk about the middle class, I also want to talk about education. It's extremely important to me as an educator, and it's extremely important to our economy and the rise of the middle class. I don't believe the solutions come from Washington on education. Big government bureaucracy in Washington is putting unfunded mandates on the states, is driving up our property taxes and costing jobs. And let's repeal the Common Core as it's being carried out on the state level. I could tell you as a parent sitting there, and a lot of our parents listening at home are maybe thinking already, boy, I'm glad it's almost summer vacation. I don't want to sit there and do this stupid math the way that a bunch of government bureaucrats tell us to do it that takes 5 times as long as it did when we were kids. And so let's get the federal government out of education here. Let's have more choices here. So much of this is going to come on the local level, but let's lift up BOCES programs, trade programs, and others that we could have good livings with. Let's focus on the value of education. Let's get the bureaucrats out of it.
And Assemblywoman Tenney, the final rebuttal here, 45 seconds.
One thing we all know, there are 2 people that need to be removed from office to help our economy and our small business. One is Andrew Cuomo, and the other one is President Obama, and that has to happen. The Remington Arms people have endorsed me. The Remington Union has endorsed me. They've stood behind me. I was there fighting the SAFE Act. You were there funding the SAFE Act. You gave $10,000 to Andrew Cuomo after the SAFE Act was passed. You stood around with a photo op with your $300 very nice hunting sweater and took pictures saying you stand for the Second Amendment. Why would you give $10,000 to Andrew Cuomo? Your company, which you claim you built from the ground up, gave $10,000 to Andrew Cuomo. It's just a fact. Why would you give him money if you know he's standing in the way of our Second Amendment rights and he's standing in the way of allowing our small businesses to survive?
All right, here we go with the next question. And posing that question is from WTR, Mark Baracco.
Okay, we're just past the 1-year anniversary of the escape of 2 inmates at the Clinton Correctional Facility. In our area, we've also had a number of incidents at our local correctional facilities as well. If elected, how would you reform the prison system? Because it seems a lot of corrections officers feel like they're being put out in the open.
All right, let's start with Mr. Phillips.
My brother, who was my hero, was a drug abuse counselor at the local jail, and he passed away a few years ago. One of my dreams was to work in a jail or a detention facility, and last summer I had the chance to teach at the McCormick Secure Center. It's a maximum security youth detention facility near Ithaca. It was very sad and very humbling to serve every day there. There were young men who had committed murder and rape. Some were serving life sentences. What I would say, and this comes down to the state level, is Albany is failing us miserably. I would have young men from gangs come up, yell and scream in my face, call me every name in the book, threaten me, sexual threats, physical threats, push me. I would do a write-up to the staff leaders, and I love the staff leaders. They supported me to the best of their ability, but they said, we're sorry, the state has put us under the therapeutic approach. What's going to happen to these young men? They need discipline. They were losing video games at night. Why are people that we're sending away for life who've committed murder and rape playing video games at night? The amount of resources and comforts that were put in for these young men were, it was just more than you can imagine there. And I know they've done serious things, but they need discipline. They need reform. I'm a dean of students. I've served as dean of students at a school. That's what we need, is peace through strength, tough love, if you will. It was an incredible experience that I'll always take with me, but we need major reforms. And we have a heartbreak in our inner cities with drugs, gangs, violence. We could correct that with a more vibrant economy and welfare to work, more opportunities for Americans. There's dignity in work.
All right, Assemblywoman Tenney.
Yes, we have been fighting this issue in Albany. Obviously, I am the only person who stood out and supported and defended the United Correctional Facility employees. I walked and toured the United Correctional Facility with them, as I had done back in 1989 when it first opened. I also walked with them and stood in their picket lines, and I fought tirelessly against Governor Cuomo's closure of a United Correctional Facility. And they know that, and they've been huge supporters of mine. And in exchange for that, we were told by the other politicians in this area and by Governor Cuomo that we were going to get all the millions of dollars in economic development money. I haven't seen where that particular money has gone to be directed. We have a huge crisis in our correctional facilities right now. The Democratic progressive agenda from Governor Cuomo, from Danny O'Donnell, who's the head of our corrections committee in the Assembly, and others are not fighting for our corrections officers. These are dangerous places. These people need to be disciplined, as George indicated. They have taken away many of the only resources that many of our corrections officers have to control these people. These people are in jail because they're criminals. And yes, I understand there is an occasion when somebody commits a crime and they're falsely accused, but 99% of the time these people are guilty and they are a danger to our community. And we are trying to get bills through the progressive agenda and Governor Cuomo's desire to let all these people loose and put them out in the streets. We are fighting against this. It's something that everyone needs to stand up and support. And I have stood by them, and the United Correctional people know, as have all the other prisons. We need to keep our prisons open, and we need to keep them safe.
And Stephen Wells.
Was a prosecutor. I'm the only one up here who's firsthand dealt with violent criminals. And I can tell you that these jobs of the people who have to supervise incarcerated violent felons is extraordinarily dangerous. There's no question about it. And look, it's just really what it points up to is one more time, one more area, one more thing where government in Albany is failing us and government in Washington is failing us. What I would suggest to you the solution is more people like myself that have actually done something, farmers and business people who have created things that have common sense ought to be the ones who go down to Washington and get rid of the politicians that are down there that aren't getting the job done.
Okay, we have 45 seconds for rebuttal, and starting with George Phillips.
When we talk about prison reform, I also think of when I was young, a young teacher, I had a chance to teach in an inner city. There was 1,400 students. They were all African American. I was one of the only white teachers in the school. And I walked outside that school, and I saw remnants of Lyndon Johnson's failed Great Society, all those public housing programs, all the freebies that Bernie Sanders and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton are promising, and they did so much more harm than good. We've had generation after generation trapped in poverty. When I was at the Secure Center last summer, I asked my students what jobs their parents had. Almost none of them had gainful employment. There's dignity in work. We need to scrap welfare from the U.S. Code. We need to reform disability, and disability is being abused. There's so many people on disability who could be working. We have blind people, we have handicapped people who are going out doing amazing things every day, and they need to work. There's dignity in work, and that's what would bring dignity to these young men that I worked with and their families.
All right, the rebuttal, Claudia Tenney.
Yeah, I'm also an attorney, and I've also done some criminal law, though I haven't certainly been a prosecutor as Steve Wells has. But I've been on both sides of the aisle as far as prosecutor versus defendant. And this is a very serious problem that we face in New York. Everyone knows I am not part of the Albany bureaucracy. I was not the state finance chair of the state Republican Party, donating to Cuomo, donating to other Democrats like Elliot Spitzer and all kinds of other people to gain some kind of curry favor with these politicians. I'm the one who has stood against them all. I'm the only one that stood up for a night at correctional facility among all the politicians in our region. I'm the first to call for Sheldon Silver's resignation. He supports these policies of letting prisoners out of jail and not defending our corrections officers. I'm the first one to call for the resignation of Dean Skelos and all these people that have been corrupt politicians in Albany. I am the one person that they would like to see leave Albany because they don't want someone in Albany that's a career politician like Steve Wells or someone in Washington who's going to use the system to benefit his own business.
And finally, rebuttal from Stephen Wells.
Well, yet again, the Assemblywoman has taken leave of the facts and reality. Once again, she called me a career politician. I've never run for office. I've never held office anytime, anywhere. I've had 2 jobs, essentially as a prosecutor and starting a family business. That's what I've been doing. And you want to tackle these issues, you need business people. You want to create jobs up here, we need to have a competitive environment. I would argue to you that business people who have actually done it have the best opportunity to make that happen. That's what needs to happen, not politicians. Business people, farmers, creators, people who have created wealth. That's what we need.
All right, so this is NY-22, the debate for the Republican candidates, George Phillips, Claudia Tenney, Stephen Wells. We have one more question to go, and go ahead.
I'm sorry, Bill. I've just heard back from our friends at WUTR. If you're watching this on television, they will stay with us until this debate is completed.
All right, that's awesome. Sit tight. We're going to take one break. We're going to go a little longer. We'll take a break and then come back with the final question, and then closing remarks from each of the candidates. This is the debate. As we get this underway, the primary, of course, is coming up in just a few weeks on June 28th. The final portion of our debate is coming up next on WIBX.